They were running a war plan on a messaging app and didn't even know who was invited into the conversation.
In an unprecedented security breach.
He posted one message saying to Pete Hegseth, "If you think we should do it, let's go. I just hate bailing Europe out again." Mr. Hegseth replied, "I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic."
After Goldberg started seeing reports of the strikes on social media, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz updated the chat group and described the operation as an amazing job, and then sent 3 emojis: a fist, American flag, and fire.
It is at once grimly amusing and approximately as serious as it gets. Senior officials at the very top of the government of the United States discussing ordering American forces into action somehow add a journalist to the pertinent group chat. Not for the first time in the administrations of US President Donald Trump, we are compelled to consider a scenario which would have been scratched from an early draft of any satire as just honkingly unsubtle. We will come presently to possible explanations, plausible implications, and likely ramifications, but first a brisk recap of the facts. On March 11th, Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, received a connection request on Signal, purporting to come from US National Security Advisor Michael Waltz. Before Goldberg could assume, as any reasonable person might, that the next message would offer him a share in Saddam Hussein's missing gold in exchange for his bank details, he was added to a chat called Houthi PC Small Group. On March 15th, Goldberg witnessed conversations about imminent strikes against the Houthis, an Iranian proxy in Yemen, who have been making pests of themselves taking potshots at shipping navigating the Suez Canal. Among those appearing to participate in these conversations were Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. The strikes duly occurred. Goldberg had had a sensational scoop dropped into his lap. The first question is, how could this happen? Though in US intelligence circles, that question is probably being posed with a phrase rhyming with the cluck in between how and could. There are a couple of possible explanations. One is that Goldberg was deliberately added to the chat as a deft and subtle strategic maneuver in some intricate 9-dimensional chess game occurring far, far beyond the ken of most mortals. The other is that the cabal with which President Donald Trump has surrounded himself are a wretched sack of bungling nitwits. Listeners may arrive at their own judgment vis-à-vis which seems the more likely.
Try to start a group text, you're adding people and you accidentally add the wrong person. All of a sudden your Aunt Mary knows all your raunchy plans for the bachelor party. Well, that kind of happened today with the Trump administration.
The next questions all relate to how serious this actually is.
Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
It seems clear by now that the Trump administration does not propose to take it seriously. Efforts are afoot from the president downwards to blame Jeffrey Goldberg.
I don't know this guy. I know him by his horrible reputation, and he really is the bottom scum of journalists.
The media generally, perhaps an intern who is not inconveniently related to a major donor.
Somebody that was with Mike Waltz, worked for Mike Waltz at a lower level.
Trump-compliant talking heads are trying to laugh it off as no more a faux pas than accidentally copying in that annoying colleague you were all trying not to invite to a drink after work. And yes, guys, it still hurts.
Well, it's a mistake. You know, we make mistakes. We all make mistakes.
So, the big one first. Has anyone actually broken the law? It would appear so. The United States Espionage Act, to start with, mandates up to 10 years in the clink for handling national security material with such carelessness. The Presidential Records Act and the Federal Records Act do not permit use of the disappearing messages facility offered by Signal or other non-official platforms. Indeed, a law dating from 2014 specifically instructs federal employees to copy such messages to an official account for the purposes of preservation. Technically, any US government worker who texts their boss that their train is late should copy it to their government email account. Any such prosecutions, however, would be the responsibility of the US Justice Department, which is to say the current US Justice Department, which appears to agree with President Trump that it serves exclusively at his whim. And not that accusations of hypocrisy have ever bothered Trump much, but locking up half his cabinet for this might prompt recollection of those boxes of classified material with which he absconded from the White House in 2021 and stashed in Mar-a-Lago's bathrooms.
Isn't it amazing? I have a big pile of papers. This thing just came up. Look. Except it is like highly confidential, secret. This is secret information.
On the upside, this might at last stop American conservatives from wanging interminably on about Hillary Clinton's private email server, which, to be clear, was also bad.
It was a mistake, and I am very sorry about that.
The next question: can we assume that the national security of the United States has been horrifically compromised by the complacency and incompetence of those who have sworn to defend it? The consensus among former intelligence personnel is best imagined as a long, anguished scream from down a well. For it does not seem likely that this was the only off-the-books chat group being convened on a non-government platform, and it has to be reckoned at least possible that other such groups may have been vulnerable, whether through someone inveigling their way aboard or by one of Trump's cabinet copying in someone called Dmitry, Zhang or Ahmad without wondering where they work. And as Signal cannot, by and large, be downloaded onto official government-issued phones, it seems therefore likely that the leaders of the free world were communicating on their personal devices, at which recall last year's revelation that Chinese hackers had accessed the phones of personages including but not limited to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Never mind Jeffrey Goldberg, they might as well have copied in Ayatollah Khamenei. None of this will be reassuring American allies already wondering how reliable a partner the US still is. But did we actually learn anything from the chat that we did not know or could not have guessed? Not really. There was some bitching about Europeans, but they've done plenty of that in public, and there was some deployment of macho emojis, which might have seemed charmingly gauche from 15-year-old boys discussing a win by their football team.
To which Steve Witkoff responded with 5 emojis, 2 hands praying, a flexed bicep, and 2 American flags.
It is arguable that in any kind of normal administration, this wouldn't have happened in the first place. But if this had happened in any kind of normal administration, this explainer would have been a recitation of the people who had resigned, been sacked, or possibly arrested as a consequence. For Monocle Radio, I'm Andrew Mueller.